How should people who have not experienced an inner home themselves, but only evaluation, i.e., people in this culture are almost always in life struggle mode. These are the lowest needs. Do I have enough food? How am I going to pay the rent? And the like. I'm really happy about that. That sounds perverse. I suffered a lot in the GDR, the wall, death squads and all that. I wrote a long poem about it myself in 5th grade. In my diary. How terrible it was. There was the line, a state set up like a terrarium, even though you know that nobody likes to give up their freedom. Okay, the thing had rhymed. But it was a line like that because I suffered from it, and everyone thought it was somehow normal. Then I just wrote it in my diary, a multi-liner like that, and that as a child. So I'll start like this. You are never determined, no matter how you have suffered, how life-threatening you may be. That's another lie, that you are determined. So I had 3 war zombies at home, so to speak. It's so gross, I've never told you that openly on YouTube, because I don't want you to feel sorry for me. Instead, mysticism is that you first develop compassion and appreciation for yourselves, that you say thank you, that you persevered, that you didn't give up, that your inner voice as a child was really true when it said it can't be. They all seem dead to me. Or I don't want to be an adult as a teenager like they are. Or it can't be that it's all about making money. It's about making money for people who are initially in survival mode and they need a stopper like, hello, haven't I had enough? Isn't it enough now? Or something like that. So for me as a child, 3 war zombies, 1 grandma with 2 world wars, raped by Russians together with my mother in the second. Before that, a shooting situation. They are extinct people. There's nothing left. You can't expect anything as a child. So I have to say that as an excuse, even though I keep telling people about my mother's sadism. She just didn't want a child. And she really tortured me mentally at times. So she'd hold a pair of scissors in front of my nose and say I was about to slice her nostrils open and stuff like that. And she'd gloat about my fear. Or if I didn't do what she said, she would beat me to death in the heat of the moment. I was a super good child. You bet your life I was. And a father who vied for her attention and only saw me as a sibling rival, and always told me you dove to life like a porcupine to wipe your ass, and always wished I'd commit suicide. Now anyone could say my life is over. But the crazy thing is the situation. They didn't want to talk to me because I spent a lot of time alone like a monk. And that meant I wasn't programmed as much, so it was left to me. I had distance. So in kindergarten, I was considered mentally handicapped and retarded because I couldn't tie shoelaces. That was noticeable. Everyone else could, because my mother didn't want to talk to me. I was like a Kaspar Hauser. But in this total neglect and threat to my life, until my near-death experience, I almost always had concentration camp dreams that I would be killed at any time. That was too long. I was totally broken. But this, no matter what the situation, there is an inner voice that says it can't be with this form of society. And on the one hand, I tried exactly this path. Which society? I tried all the promises of happiness. Because when you've been through such a struggle for survival, you're as tough as a rat. And then, after my parents' house, so you don't feel too sorry for me, I always looked for mentors. So I always tried to fulfill their expectations so that they would like me and take care of me a bit, support me, Baptist churches and all that. And there's a bit of love everywhere, you have to say. But then I myself was, first of all, let's say, a Baptist theologian, but then I didn't want to be a Protestant pastor. I was ordained, you don't have it, but I was ordained by the Protestants. That was the first East-West German, let's say, ordination process. So being ordained together, Berlin, St. Mary's Church, was actually very moving. And until then I hadn't understood Christianity in any other way. So you have a secure position, you want to do something good somehow, you're on the track, a bit of social criticism, Social work is important, but I didn't understand anything about mysticism, people who are still in over-evil mode and just want to forget how bad it was and just somehow try to jump over every stick so they can get appreciation somewhere. They're almost willing to do anything. In my, if you call it quiet time or whatever, I just sit in a kayak on the sea for hours on end. I have to be very alert. I can't just daydream. And I'm just open to what is. Or in a pretty stupid bay, but it's not near my house, but there's a mini beach. It's maybe 20 meters long. It's all tarred at the top, but there's a bit of nature left, just as your nature is as a human being. This great bay, half tarred, but still residual nature. And you look at it without thinking, and then I just let it happen. So I was always in total permission, every feeling that came up. And then I discovered that there's a murderer in me too. There's a killer in me too. Or I fell short again. Nothing is enough for me. Nothing fills me up. And then I asked myself questions like that, but full of compassion, not from the superego. Zabinchen, how much money do you need to feel safe? You see, you poor sod, you're just scared to death. Do you think if you work too much, you'll have conquered your fear of death? Why don't you do more love mysticism? Something like that. So that you don't criticize these people who are still in survival mode to death. And then allow themselves to have all our basic needs almost trampled underfoot. Most people have neither, which is also proven by attachment research. This society is a society of, let's say, roughly a Western society, 75% of people with attachment disorders. And there are 3 types of attachment disorders, i.e. insecure attachment and so on. So there's a kind of primal mistrust and fear, a kind of competition. If you create something like Hitler in the book, The German Mother and Her First Child, as an expert video, I would almost have said as an expert book, then of course you have masses of easily controllable underdevelopment. I'll take the experiment as an example because I always want to tell stories so vividly so that you don't just have concepts but stories that perhaps reach your heart. I may have told you this before. An African woman once wanted to earn money by running a baby carriage store in her town or village. Beautiful models, total bankruptcy. She thought, that's so cool. They don't all have baby carriages. And some of them are also into Western things. Do you know what the women said? Yes, but I want to feel my child and carry it with me instead of pushing it around in a box on wheels. And that's why it failed. So that's how someone with a secure attachment reacts. Instead of, yes, a symbolic child or something. If you read and meditate a lot, from page 103 in Search of Lost Happiness, internalize it first. Instead of saying to yourself, oh God, I've done everything wrong with my children, internalize it as a compliment to the love mysticism exercise, that you deserve what's described there. Instead of, oh God, I suck so bad, I've done everything wrong, I'm a sinner. Because your brain doesn't distinguish between inner images and outer images. Like in the gospel, internalize almost every sentence about how they treat the children. So that thing was kind of the reason why you could sell slings back then. It's not really about that in essence. It's that the children can sleep in bed between their parents for as long as they want. In a flash, very few people have a crying child. The child only cries because it has a need instead of, oh God, when will it finally stop? As children, you still know what need you have. Or if you don't get enough attention, then you whine and whine instead. You should eat up. But you're not hungry at all. You don't need food at all. You need attention. So there's actually nothing wrong with you. So that's the excuse about the church. And now tell me again, Stavko, the core of your question. Because first of all, I always have to embed it. A theology of the attachment disordered is of course different from a theology. Now you know why love mysticism has such a central position It heals the attachment disorder. And it doesn't matter. So that healed most things in me too. Like a camp inmate, I have all the symptoms of long-term traumatization. And inside me there's still the avenging killer who wants to prove everything to everyone, and yet I'm great and lovable, and then someone in whom fear of death can still be unleashed. But if you say, I'm in the permission that there's a killer in me, and I'm in the permission that there's fear of death in me, and then you say that's just like a fairy tale. The black side and the white side, the white magician and the black magician or something, and then you just continue to fulfill the basic needs of love mysticism, then you become quite purring and peaceful like a cat. And now, look, where does the church teach you love mysticism? That's what's missing. I took a very close look because I'm actually a typical brainiac in this society, an absolute loser. I'm always being told by my own mother that if you don't do this, I'll put you in a home, or I'll beat the living daylights out of you, or by grandma. Are you going to Paris? Yes, so she grew up before 1900 and unfortunately had authority over me. But that's breaking your will, creating a subject, beating, threatening, insulting. Almost nobody is allowed to do that. And so I was really able to contemplate and allow the lowest disgusting source of culture, as they call it. Then I even if it is the way it is, how am I playfully and easily an all-round happy person? So that's the core. And when you have healed these attachment disorders within you, then you see that these seemingly evil symptoms or sinful tendencies, like always wanting to be the center of attention, always wanting to be praised, or greed or greediness, or lots of evil thoughts. The neighbor, I'm talking bad about her again. I've just watched it over and over again. You have a binge, so I almost couldn't keep my eating window at the interval. Or when did I have such a desire to talk bad about my neighbor? I had a look. What's under there? So what's right about it, that I now have such an insane desire to gossip about my neighbor? And then I kept looking at it and thinking, I'm a poor bastard. How can I fulfill my needs better with love mysticism? And that's the beginning. And then, when I no longer need so much recognition, I realize that it's actually nice to have guests in the house, but it's also nice to just sit here. I just sit and look over towards Reinhard in Heikendorf. And then, oh, it's so cool how the sun is now shining copper gold in the window. It looks like Heikendorf is about to burn down. It's a good thing that's not the case. Well, if I don't have any waves now, how would he have waves like that? And somehow, because I did it so often, a stupid thing happened. I suddenly didn't feel like practicing the piano anymore because I told myself that this is the most beautiful symphony. The sound of the wings of the wild geese and the rar, 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 rar. And then an oyster catcher, which I can hardly imitate. It's like a clown among the birds. And then I sit there, I'm just aware of it and think, oh, what a magical swan. That's a cultural appreciation. And now I can read his feelings. He just thought I was shit for sitting in his bay, and his hissing, which came afterwards, really wasn't a greeting, I thought. Well, I'll sit here anyway, stupid swan. Well, I'm not sitting sacredly either. So in short, this is the beginning of complacency. So that's the beginning of self-love. Everything is there. There's nothing to achieve. I don't need anything more. I don't need the latest PC. I don't need the latest kayak model. I'm almost sick that I don't need that. I don't need the latest bike model. I don't need the latest branded clothes, what's in fashion now. I just wear the clothes I feel comfortable in now, without knowing about trendy colors. And that's because when I wear this jacket, almost everyone wants to pet me. So that's where I stand by being completely undercuddled, yes. So here I am, Ecki, born in 51, but I'm also in the permit. That's a very fine man, yes. Well, but let's say he's a poor German work machine, in which the feelings have been killed off. Let's give him time, but I'll put on my jacket so that I might be stroked better. And then you realize that the seemingly mystical, trans-religious is simply the trans-cultural. This culture here is based on violence and quasi-soul stealing. So recognition is taken from you, your self-worth is taken from you, and then you are prepared to do almost anything to get it back and buy it back, and then see when you get it back. So it's true that the children, that's also the issue here, that the children are put into competition with each other. A normal child is altruistic. So if it's not always the case, even families are not necessarily just a place of love. Be aware of it instead of dreaming. If love is scarce and recognition or even material is so scarce, then the siblings are already competing with each other and one disrupts the other, or one tells on the other. Unfortunately, that's also not so nice from survival mode onwards. And church should be the place where you first see your needs, learn to empathize with yourself, stand by your needs, become self-sufficient in this area, and then all the substitute compensation boxes will stop. So greed or wanting to compete or whatever. I thought about whether I would even resume the live seminar business and took my chances. I got in touch with Silt a bit too late and haven't heard back yet. Then I think, cool, I can just sit here and look over to Heikendorf. Sometimes I get carried away with a kayak. I have to set the best records on the sea now. And then I think, how does that feel? Does that make me big, wide and light? That's the old competitor again. Let's see, where am I doing badly? Let's do love mysticism again. So you realize how easy it is, and then you can sit in the forest. Maybe loneliness will come. For me it's the sea. And then you realize, what are the places that make me big, wide and light? Namely places where you are not judged. Almost every evaluation hurts you. You have to be someone else. Try to be the one so that others are finally happy with you. You are tearing yourselves apart. Mysticism is the opposite. You no longer listen to reviews, which is why this one video on YouTube is so central. So these are today's interpretations to help you understand Jesus. And purely by chance, I thought yes. So my dissertation and habilitation were always about spiritual topics. And my habilitation was about how self-worth is destroyed and how self-esteem disorders can be healed. That's the core problem of the culture here. As long as you see a goal outside of you, you will not have peace. Then you might be a shopping addict or a sex addict or an alcoholic because the center is hollow. From there, as you see this, I'm not lovable and I have no value and I can't compete and make a name for myself. So from there, how you have healed this in you through love mysticism, and then also manage the exercise of will well, or here the neuro become extremely strong-willed. And also neuros for self-love and self-worth, which are included in the webinars. From then on, you get an entrepreneurial personality. So nothing is predetermined, nothing has to stay that way, and then you can choose freely. So that's the deepest wound, so to speak, that 75% of people have. Please don't demand recognition from people like that. It's like reaching into a poor person's pocket. That doesn't work. And that doesn't mean forgiving everything, letting everything slide. Then you just see, crap, I can't get that from my mother or my partner. He's broken himself or depressed or something. Allow it. Be in permission instead of somehow imposing it on them, but become emotionally self-sufficient. That's the core of mysticism for a start. It needs to be healed. I always have a dual perspective. Mystical tradition, its exercises and how they work psychoanalytically. And why did I have to do 700 hours of psychoanalysis? And it didn't really help me. After that, I could have said, "You're so broken. It's still the nightmares. Even that doesn't help you. Now you can let it go." Well, the near-death experience hit me. From then on, I was no longer suicidal and was happy and at peace. But that thins out when you return to normal life. But to that extent, I tried the main mystical building blocks, so humble and goofy and boring looking to others, to make Super Kundalini or something, that you are stable personalities first. What we do on Monday evening is always the heart opening, so that we can overcome this panic of being threatened, that we go back into the vastness. It's already very sustainable.